Hey guys, what's up? Brent Calmer from Blue Water VST, and thanks for joining me for this video today. This one is enormous fun. I know I always say that, but this one really is something special. What we're going to do in this video is render a series of loops from Reaktor's factory content, specifically Reaktor's grooveboxes, and then we are going to create a sample map from those loops, and then we will import that sample map into Random Step Shifter so we can slice and dice and have all sorts of fun with the loops that we've recorded. So this is great because you can leverage the content you already have in Reaktor and use it in a new and creative way, which is really what Reaktor is all about. So this is just a great way of doing it. Now I have loaded Massive, and Massive is a groovebox, of course, that can be found in Factory, Ensembles, New Additions, and Grooveboxes. It's Massive 1.1 here. And after having loaded it, the first thing that I'm going to do is activate Reaktor's player recorder. And to do this, come up to this tape icon at the header here. It's in between the sample map editor icon and the info hints icon. Click on that, and that will bring up the player here at left and the recorder at right. Now, because we're recording loops, a very handy feature is to set this recorder to record a certain number of bars. We can do this by coming over here to this gear icon, clicking on it to bring up the recorder settings dialog. Now, this gives us a variety of options in terms of how to start and stop the recording. And because we're recording loops, and all of Reaktor's grooveboxes go with the system clock for starting, we'll set this to clock start, and then to stop it we will set it to loop length, because this will allow us to record a certain number of bars, which we determine here in the loop length section, and then it will just record that number of bars and stop, which is perfect for recording loops. And I've also checked slave player controls to recorder just so we can verify using our play function here that we've recorded the loop we want. I'm going to hit OK there, and then I'm going to select a snapshot that I like, which is Snapshot Bank 1, Snapshot 36, called Floor Shot in C. It's kind of a deep house groove. I will arm this for recording, and this will bring up a do you wish to overwrite the previous sample or the previous recording. I'm going to hit OK. You can also click on this blank piece of paper icon here next to the gear to set up a new file for recording, in which case you won't get that overwrite warning. And now I am going to click on the return to zero button, which is right of the BPM, and I'm going to get this going by hitting play. And you'll see that as it starts to go, it will record 4 bars, and after 4 bars it will just stop recording. So it will proceed, and then you'll see it stop at some point. So here we go. And there we go. I'll stop the master transport. You see that it got to this 7.8, and now I am going to stop this. I'm going to hit play, and this should play back what we've just recorded. Brilliant. So there it is. We have our loop perfectly chopped. Now I can drag on this multi-directional icon to the left of the audio file name and drag this out onto my desktop. And then it will be there as a file, and I can collect it with my other files. Now, probably what I would do is set up a file or a folder on my desktop called samples, which is basically what I've done. And I will drag each of these into that folder, and then we could process them all at once. So you can switch between any of these snapshots. You can switch between Massive and, say, another groovebox like Newscool. Use the same recorder settings and just record 3 or 4 or 5 loops from each groovebox, and then save them to your sample folder before creating the sample map, which is what we're going to do next. Great. I've rendered 5 samples from each of 3 Reaktor grooveboxes, including Massive, Newscool, and SineBeats. And now what we're going to do is use the Reaktor sample map generator to create a sample map including all of these loops. So if you need a refresher on this, consult the video that I did on the Reaktor sample map generator. I've loaded this, and first I'm going to choose the directory to which I want to save the sample map. So if I choose sample map directory, I'm just going to click on this, sample maps. Click choose the sample directory. This is the folder that has the samples in it that I wish to assemble into a sample map. Click choose, and then create maps. And you see that in the destination folder, this new file appears, sample map generator _samples.map. So now we're good to go. Now we have our sample map. Now we just need to go back into Reaktor, load Random Step Shifter, and load this baby in there. So that's next. Okay, we're back inside Reaktor, and I have loaded Random Step Shifter. Now this can be located under Factory, Ensembles, New Additions, and Sample Transformer. This is one of my favorite Reaktor ensembles because it takes something very complex and makes it both musical and simple. What this does is transform samples in a variety of ways. So we have a sample map in here, and we can switch between samples. We can move throughout the sample and jump around within the sample and play different parts. We can alter the pitch of the sample, and we can alter the envelope of the sample. And we can do this in two main ways. Now, the first way is to use this sequencer at top, which allows us to sequence sample selection, the sample offset, which is the part of the sample that's being played, and the pitch. Let's take an example. So you see that this position indicator is jumping around. And if we look at the sample offset section, you see that this sequencer SEQ button is activated, meaning the sample, the part of the sample being played is being determined by the sequencer data that we have in here. And we can draw in extra data. The height of this bar determines where in the sample we are playing. So it will slice and dice, and you can just draw in whatever you like up here. This is one way of doing it. Now, the second way is to activate random, and this will use pseudo-random principles, algorithms essentially, that interact with the sequencer data and give us a level of chance, but also some control over what's happening and how these hits are occurring. So it doesn't take long for things to start sounding a lot different. Now, all of these parameters occur in each of the 4 sections, so you can transform the samples, the very sample that's being played, by using the sample select part. So I can activate this, and once I get this sequence going, I can draw in some data up here, and for each of those hits, we will activate a different sample. So the sky's the limit with this thing. It packs an enormous amount of power and an enormous amount of fun into a very small space. But our goal here is to load our own samples. So let's activate the sample map editor by clicking on this waveform icon. And before I go further, I should tell you that I have saved this as a separate file, just to foreclose any possibility that I will save over the samples that this ensemble comes with. So that might be a good idea to do as well. Now, to load the samples, to load the loops that we've just created and the sample map that we just created, I'm going to right-click on the blue part here and go Sample Map, Import, Replace. And then I will navigate to where my sample map is. I've already done this, but you may have to find it on your file system. Click on this and open it. And voila, there are our samples. Right, so we can audition each of these. We have our Newscool samples, we have our SineBeats samples. So, very cool indeed. Now, let's get these going with one of some random step shifter snapshots. So, here it's taking the first sample and jumping through it, but I could take this sample selection and move to a different sample. Now, this is a Newscool sample, very bassy and synthetic sounding. Now, what's cool here is that we are just using basically one parameter change, and we are sequencing the sample offset position. But if we have the sample selection section turned to off, we can just move through each of these samples as we wish. Now, we can also get farther out there, and we can randomize the sample selection itself, and then it will choose between these randomly. We could also sequence the sample selection if we have selection data in there, and we can sequence the pitch. We get in here with the pitch and really go nuts with this thing. I'll bring up the range so that it's so all of a sudden the sample sounds completely different, which tells you why they call this thing a sample transformer. This is just a great way of breathing life into your loops. And you don't have to use loops that you've exported from Reaktor. Of course, you could use your own vocals. You could use recordings of your band, anything. I mean, it's just so much fun to use and inspiring. So if you're in a rut and you're looking for a new way of exploring some of the sounds you already have, give this a try. I find it a lot of fun to use. It's great for jamming. So I hope you've enjoyed this, guys. I'll talk to you again soon. Take care. See you next week.